So hello everyone and good afternoon if you are in Europe. um, Today, together with my colleagues Catherine and Katarina, we are going to share with you some lessons and some results of our work in the context of the items project. We've been working on this project for at least around 3 years now, because the project is going to end next June. And the project is about the possibility to work on a science explainer and to train them in order to enable them to work properly with some specific audience member, which are migrants and seniors. The training focus on migrants and seniors as particular audience member that often are neither represented or respected in the museum offers. It can happen on one end, they could be underrepresented by the activities proposed by museum. On the other, they could be stereotype, and so the offer provided to them is not adequate. The objective of the project itself is to provide in the end a training course for explainers in Science Center and museum, and to provide them some concrete strategies, some tools, and also reinforce awareness when it comes to work with these audiences. As I said, the project is going to end formally the next June. And the training we have developed, test with our colleagues and fine-tune according to their feedbacks, will be ready by the end of the project. And it will also be in 2 different formats, online and offline, because it has been conceived to be as much transferable and usable as possible, or at least this is what we hope. Going back to senior citizens, the very first question we ask to ourselves when we start to work on this project is, who are they? Who are we talking about when we talk about seniors? And the answer to this question was one of the main learning outcomes, even for the working team as well, because the answer is an extremely heterogeneous group. When we talk about seniors, we learn that we should be careful to take into account a broad range of elements that can impact on the definition of who could be defined and who couldn't be defined as seniors. For instance, biology, medicine, psychology, society, or even the belonging culture could impact on the way in which a person can be defined or not as seniors. Just to mention some very stupid example, but let's think about in our culture of a person around 65 years old and another one of 19 years old. Both are definable seniors, even though between the two of them, there's at least a generation of distance, and the former could be the son or the daughter of the latter. Or for example, there are cultures in which a 40-year-old woman could be already a grandmother, and other cultures in which a 50-year-old woman could still have children. So it is better to take into account this heterogeneity to avoid any discrimination when it comes to a museum experience. Not recognizing that seniors are an heterogeneous group could lead to offer them activities that are not suitable or that are not adequate to them. And so what we can do to shape our offer in an adequate way, how we can set up museum activities that could be relevant for them. Actually, we weren't able to answer to this question alone inside the working group. And we realized that the answer to this question is another question, which is that we should ask to them, who better could know the expectations and the desire or the motivation of a senior to spend some time in a museum that seniors themselves. And once we ask them, we will find out that a relevant museum experience for a senior citizen is not just about accessibility, but it should take into account a wide range of other elements. So what's their ideal visit? What we can do to shape a visit that could be really enjoyable for them? And with this question, I hand over the word to Catherine, which is going to go on with our reflection.
Thank you, Julia. Okay, I'm trying to share. Up. Is it a good screen that you're seeing? Okay, not from the beginning. Okay, so here I'd like to share with you some concrete recommendation, but I just want you to keep in mind that it was relevant in our context. So with the focus group we interviewed in our museum, so it's seniors that can come in a museum in terms of autonomy in science museums. So maybe there is a lot of other recommendation in other contexts. And the other point is that Julia said there are really a heterogeneous groups. So you won't have like a visit which is ideal for everybody, but just keep in mind that sometimes we have only one kind of offer for seniors and we need to have more diverse activities. So I'm going to say recommendation, and I hope that some activity will have 1 point and another activity 1 point. And of course, I'm happy to discuss about that after. So the first point maybe is more about accessibility, but not only, is the fact that a visit or a science show or a guided tour, whatever activity within the museum, have to take place in a safe and reassuring environment. So I was happy that Alexia said at the beginning that we are a safe environment. I guess we all need that, but if we are most vulnerable, it's even more important. And it's also important because one of the motivation that more than 60 years old people have when they go in museum is also to reassure themselves, to gain self-confidence. So we met a researcher that is called Esther Gajek and highlight this kind of motivation. So concretely, what does it mean? That means that we have to prepare a real welcome time. And of course, I think you say, of course, we welcome people, we say hi and all that. But during the training, we really make clear that during the welcome, you have several elements that are really important for the rest of the activity. And we create a bingo of the welcome. And one point of the welcome time is also to be clear of what is going to happen during the activity. It's not like first point we're going to talk about and then that, but will we be walking, at which time it finish and all that, because it's also this kind of activity that can help people to anticipate if they need some adjustment, and they can do choice by themselves. So you're not imposing and saying, you're disabled, you're going to sit down right now. No, it's at this point you could sit down here if you need it, and it's really more comfortable and you have better sense of autonomy. But of course, some of these points are not only about science explainers. So as I said, it allows to anticipate where you require support. This is also important when we imagine activities that have prerequisite. I don't know how you say in English, so something you need to do, for example, using a tablet or understand a word in English and all that. And sometimes we conceive activity without being clear about that. And it can create situation where people are having a failure in front of a group. And that kind of experience is not wanted by visitors and neither senior visitors. And the last point is, of course, as Julia say, ask them what they want and ask them for feedback after. Because sometimes explainers can't have something after the activity, but during they can really have some tools to have a feedback of what went well. For example, I really like, it's a UCL Museum Wellbeing Measure Toolkit, and they've made a little visual tool. You just have to put some crows, and they really choose what is relevant for older people. So they really take some focus group about that.
And no, sorry, are you share?
Yeah, I'm not. I don't share the good screen.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's fine.
Okay, so that was my first point. I hope it's clear. The second is, again, when we ask during the focus group and when we discuss with the researcher that work on seniors in museum, there is also the motivation of meeting other people. And we all have this need of relatedness, need to feel connected. And that means that sometimes we should propose activities that are more based on dialogue and not only top-down activities. So most of activity Esther Gadget I've seen for seniors are basically lectures. So why don't we propose them some workshop, discussion-based activity and all that? The other point is to create personal connection also with explainer or even collection. So if you can and you offer regular activity, it could be interesting to have the same explainer the whole time so we can facilitate individual connection. And also think about narrative entrance where people have personal stories about object, instrument, people related to our collection. And of course, the last point is propose interaction with other visitors. So of course, if you're doing a workshop, it's easier than a lecture. But it's also thinking about whom they're going to interact. And some of the senior interviews just didn't want to do activities that are specifically designed for seniors. They want to meet people from other ages because age for certain activity is not a relevant criteria. For example, I really like the Food Planet project where they go in retirement home and have children and older people having a placemate that represent a meal, and they tell, oh yeah, I used to eat that when I was younger, and I put that inside and all that, and then you have a discussion about ecological issues related to food. Okay, let's continue about what could be an ideal visit in a museum. This point, I really like it, and it's really important for me, is that we focus on accessibility and all that, but we neglect sometimes the need we all have about competence. And of course, it's also true for people who have a life experience. So how can we imagine visits that value or reinforce skills of people? One suggestion is, of course, to have some activities that allow participants to share their knowledge and skills. A project I like from our partner is something called Tell Me About Your Technologies, where people, including seniors, come with an object and say what they know about it. So it's about how I use it, what is a scientific concept and all that. So they learn from each other. It's not only the science explainer and even not the science explainers that have the knowledge. It's a participant that have it. Another possibility is also to propose activities that increase skills. I felt, but maybe I'm wrong, and we're going to talk about that sometimes we imagine that older people won't learn anymore. So we don't propose this kind of activity, but they can. For example, I've got some colleague right here at Cité des Sciences that try to make some workshop activity where people can make their own vegetable diets. So, to put colors on your clothes based on plants. And finally, the last point is not about the scope of explainer, but I wanted to share it, is also think about how can we transform them in explainers, because they already have knowledge and we can accompany them to even better transmit it. So I met the team from Planétarium de Vaux-en-Velin in France, and for some seniors that come in a monthly conference, some were volunteers to accompany school groups within the museum and share with them their knowledge, help them to understand how to interact with the exhibition. And at Louvre-Lens Museum, that is not scientific, but I like that, they create a workshop that is called The Art of Being Grandparents, where grandparents come during a few hours, they discover the museum, the content, they have tips on the way to interest children, and then they can come back with their family and be the science explainer of the family. Sorry, okay. The other point I wanted to share with you is about relevance, and the fact that we have to question, do we propose something that will have an impact for our audience that is really meaningful for them? So the first recommendation will be to allow individual expression. So everyone can have the opportunity to ask themselves what are their connection to the subject, why is it meaningful? We all, I think, in the project really liked reading Nina Simon, The Art of Relevance book, and the experience she talked about where in a visit of a campus, people have to write down or imagine their link to the trees because they will going to walk to the trees, and then the science explainer is going to make links about this experience during the visit, and it's engaging the audience. The other point is, of course, choosing a relevant angle. We can't, as explainers, choose our collection, our exhibition, but we can choose the narrative entrance that will help people to feel the link with their life, the interest, for example, having about new technologies, the impact on their daily life, or choosing to have a historical point of view. And the last point is also linked to what Esther Gajek highlighted in her study. Older people also come to have an unusual experience. So maybe let's think about something less usual than lecture, but having, for example, she talked about an activity where all the citizens were learning percussion, and the fact that sometimes it was frustrating for them to have this kind of activity just for younger adults, but not for them, and things they really wanted to try. So I hope this question you a lot. We will discuss about that. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you both. That was really, really interesting. And I actually just put in the chat, but it reminds all that stuff around individual expression and something a wee bit different. Reminds me of a project some partners did around the coming back out ball. So older people embracing their LGBTQ identities and doing kind of dance events and all across Scotland, which kind of has lots of elements of that. Brilliant. Are there any questions, immediate questions before we go into breakout and have a little think about how this might apply in your work, some of those tips and those tools? One that I definitely have is, do you have some of the links of some of those projects? Would you be able to share them? Because especially the one that I just love, the one about the, what was it, the family where they were trained to then become the explainer for their families.
I've got a link in French.
That's okay. Ça marche avec moi. But maybe even just the title of the name or whatever it is quite helpful. Yeah. Awesome. Oh yeah, Amparo.
Hi everyone. Well, this it's very inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing your programs and the way you are engaging our elders. In my country, talking about elders or in my culture, it's like a word of respect, right? Our ancestors or our elders. So I'm from Mexico. I live in the US, but what I want to share as well is Reggio Emilia, right? That it's an approach to work with very young children. They have this idea also of involving all people from the community with the children. And there's this thing called the Reggio Day that is actually in May, where elders are doing that. They're the teachers, right? There's this understanding that the environment is also a teacher, and the elders in the community bring so much knowledge to our lives, right? I was raised by my grandma, and for me, it was a privilege. Of course, sometimes a clash of ideas or ideologies. My grandma had ideas from the 19th century that she wanted to raise me with those ideas while I was a rebel teenager in the 1980s. But that clash allows you to move, right? And to understand things beyond whatever you want to understand. So very inspiring. And I hope that we can continue giving this population in our communities the opportunity to continue giving back and have a reason to wake up and to connect with people and to be social. Those are my 2 cents. Thank you so much for sharing.
And I have a short reaction. I was quite surprised when we are running this project that it's quite clear that you won't say that you don't want migrants as visitors. It's not politically correct, right? But about seniors, I felt that some people could really easily say that they didn't like to have seniors in museum, and some kind of discrimination that is more assumed. So I was a little bit surprised about that. So I don't know if it's just in France, in France or just in museum, but it was, yeah, a big surprise.
No, I think that's, yeah, I do think there's probably ageism is definitely very recognized, certainly within the UK. And there are also a lot of organizations I know who specifically work in that type of work and like creative aging and that type of stuff. And so, yeah, but it's a point well made, I think, to challenge some of our assumptions, perhaps. Christina.
I think the definition of seniors has changed too. I mean, I'm almost a senior, as Antonia said, I'm getting there. And if I see somebody of 80 years old, is somebody today that was probably 60 years old, not so far away, so far back. So the terminology or what we associate to senior people is quite different from some years ago, I will say. And seniors of 80 years old can jump from a plane, so you know, we are not anymore in the old way seniors we used to like to look at seniors. And I think that's the important part that we have to trigger. What you mean a senior is it somebody that is not working anymore? Is it somebody that yeah, so that will be the key issue, I think, in several parts of this subject.
Definitely. Well, yeah, thanks for that. What I'll suggest is we take that to a breakout room, just so we can talk a little bit more kind of in depth, and then we'll come back together and draw some themes. So I've put everyone into breakout rooms. I think